Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So, one of the things about being a film reviewer, and one of the times when you put yourself on the line slightly, is when your opinion differs quite wildly from those around you. I often think this is the real test about being a film critic. Can you maintain your own voice, in the onslaught of, such an onslaught of popular opinion. And it's always funny when I'm of the opinion that every year you get what I like to call scapegoat movies. You get movies that are unfairly that are graced with unfairly derisory reviews. I think for a number of different reasons. I think movies can come out at the wrong time. I think movies can sort of follow on from better movies. I think there are various reasons why I think certain movies every year get unfairly tarnished with the sort of negative brush. I think one need only think a few years ago of Guy Ritchie's Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie, which came out in August 2015 and which got pretty average reviews, if not poor reviews, and I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. It sank at the box office. That pretty much torpedoed its chance of us getting any more movies like that, which I thought was a real shame because I thought it was a super stylish movie, brilliant score by Daniel Pemberton. I thought Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer were great. We're not likely to get any more of those, which I think is a real shame. And I think similarly in 2018, I think what I would call the scapegoat movie is Christopher Robin, the new Disney movie, which is the story of the grown-up Christopher as seen in A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh stories, now played by Ewan McGregor, who has now become the sort of insular, sort of boring, fuddy-duddy, absolutely sort of devoted to his work at the expense of his wife, played by Hayley Atwell, and his daughter, played by Bronte Carmichael. He's completely lost that childhood joie de vivre that he once had when he went to go and play with his friends like Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, Piglets, Tigger, and so on in the Hundred Acre Wood. He's completely lost that sense of magic. So what then happens is that it compels Pooh, voiced as per the Disney cartoon series, by Jim Cummings, to come out of the Hundred Acre Wood into London and prompt an intervention with Christopher in an attempt to rekindle that sense of childhood magic that has sort of rather tragically been lost. Now, this movie has had quite sniffy reviews. Actually, I've read a lot of reviews that have said it's a very weird movie. It's weirdly melancholy and glum, and it lacks magic, and it lacks that spirit that coursed through A.A. Milne's stories and also through the animated Winnie the Pooh cartoons. I have to say I don't agree at all. I really liked it. I liked it even to the extent I actually welled up on a couple of occasions, which I think is a sign that clearly I found this a very magical experience. And I think it does get the whimsical tone of A.A. Milne very, very well. One of the things I've seen them written about this movie is that it does that slightly sort of tricky, ambitious thing of creating an intersection point between fantasy and reality, between the world of the Hundred Acre Wood, which then butts into the real world as we know it. And I think what the movie is trying to do, it's trying to basically do a Paddington, which is in the Paddington movies are absolutely magnificent, both of them, the second one especially. Obviously, they are being held up as modern day family classics, and it's not hard to see this movie as basically attempting to do a Paddington with the Winnie the Pooh stories. But what it's trying to do, I think, it's trying to create that same sense of sort of deadpan acceptance of something that's fantastical. Because in Paddington, you have the Ben Whishaw character who is just blithely accepted by all those around him in this very sort of British, very understated way. And I think what they're trying to do here is they're trying to mine at that similar sense of deadpan humour, that sense of the fantastical and the ordinary coming together in the middle. It doesn't quite get that. But I'd be lying if I said at the moment where Christopher, as I think rather brilliantly played by Ewan McGregor, as this sort of, rather fusty, increasingly boring person who learns what it was about his childhood that was so important. When he comes back into the Hundred Acre Wood and he reunites with the gang, and then there's a sequence in which he has to pretend to defeat a heffalump to win back their trust, and there is the scene where he and Pooh are sat on the log and they are looking out over the landscape and they are talking about what it means to be a child and what it means to grow up. I found it all very, very poignant. Now, I have to say, very, very funny. A lot of that down to, the perennially morbid Eeyore, who, remains a brilliantly sort of sour character. I mean, that is a character that I think becomes funnier the older that you get. I mean, the older you get, the more possibly jaded that you get, and the more that you actually relate to that character. And his character is very acerbic and very funny. But I think that maybe one of the reasons why the movie has probably struggled is because I think, for one thing, although obviously the character of Winnie the Pooh is targeted a lot at children, I think what the movie is trying to do, particularly by focusing on a grown-up Christopher Robin, is this movie is trying to sort of capture the adults who maybe once grew up with the Winnie the Pooh stories and who can now return to it via the avatar of the grown-up Christopher Robin character, which maybe that might have confused a lot of audiences in terms of like, well, who's this aimed at? Is this aimed at children who are now just experiencing Winnie the Pooh, or is it aimed at the people who once read it and who are now being compelled to return to it via the medium of this movie? I think what the movie is trying to do, with not entirely successful results, I think what it's trying to do is it's trying to do both. I think it's trying to appeal to a wide spread of audiences in the way that, for example, a Pixar movie will hit that sweet spot between a 5 and 105. And make no mistake, this is nowhere near as sophisticated as the best of Pixar, but I think it does a pretty good job. I think there's enough physical slapstick, and the visualization of the actual of Winnie the Pooh and the gang is really well done. I think the special effects are really charming and really good, and I think the younger audiences will get a lot out of that. And I found that perfectly sweet anyway. Whereas I think adults who are willing to go with it will get a sense out of that sense of nostalgia, the fact that when you get older, you do threaten to become increasingly embittered and cynical, and what does it mean to actually tap back into that sense of childhood wonderment? And I think it does honour the spirit of A.A. Milne's stories very well, similarly the way that Goodbye Christopher Robin, the Domhnall Gleeson Margot Robbie film from last year, did, albeit from a different angle. I think this does it pretty well, and I think that it's been tarnished with some really unfair reviews, actually. And I want to go out there and say that I actually really liked it. I was moved on more than one occasion. I laughed plenty of times. I found it very magical and very sweet. And I'd say anyone who's on the fence about going to see it, go and watch it, because I think it was really, really nice. It's called Christopher Robin. It's out now, and drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner once you've seen it with your thoughts. See you soon.